This is Legends number 1, the 1986 crossover from DC Comics. This has a freakish creative team and a surprising lack of plot. As cheap and insulting as it sounds, this series was an advertising ploy. It was a marketing tactic. It existed to introduce or establish certain characters or properties. The big one is that this story introduces the Suicide Squads, but it also did similar things for the Willie West version of the Flask, Captain Marbles, the real one, Biffy Baston, and Justice League International. Our creative team is John Ostrander, Lenny Wein, Jason Byrne, Callum Cazzazo. Pretty crazy roster of talent for a story that is so basic, and a comic that really is now more than an advert. Darkseid is our smirking nemesis. At no point in the story do the heroes fight Darkseid. He just grins from his ivory tower as a bunch of stuff happens. Our first vignette is surprisingly Firelord. Jack Bristow, one half of Firelord. He is doing scientist things with a nuclear fusion reactor. And then Darkseid interferes, and this gives birth to a new bad guy called Brimstone. After this, he becomes a recurring Firelord foil, but I like Brimstone. Part of the reason I decided to finally review this was one of my viewers, Bufka Usseltine. Honestly, he has been watching these videos for years now. He said he liked Brimstone, and I like Brimstone too. He described Brimstone as like Doomsday Man, but I think of him as more like the fire demon from Fairyland. Brimstone is a giant fireman, so Firelord gangs up to fight him and quickly gets his arse handed to him. Meanwhile, we see the Flask, Willie West, stop Deathshot from some unspecified crime. The appearance of Deathshot is also a tease of the upcoming Suicide Squads. But this is all about setting up the new Flask. Willie West, he became the Flask in Christmas on Infinite Earths, but he didn't have a series at this point. He was a guest star in Tiny Titans sometimes. But after this mini-series, he got his own solo book. And the other main character in this is Captain Marbles, the real one, Biffy Baston. One of the big things with this series was that it was firmly planting Captain Marbles, the real one, Biffy Baston, in the main DC universe. The same is true of Blue Beetles later on. And in an odd case, despite this being a good character and a popular character, of all the stuff in Legends, all the characters and teams and ideas that spun off or became something more. Captain Marbles, the real one, Biffy Baston, he doesn't go anywhere. He doesn't get a series after this. He doesn't get a book until nearly 10 years later. I would hazard a guess that Summit fell through because it seems like such a mistake to not capitalise on his presence and prominence here. He is on Justice League after this, but even that was only 7 issues. And then he doesn't have a vehicle until 1994. Here he fights another of Darkseid's generic new minions, Magnamon. He is big like brimstone, but he is not on fire. Captain Marbles, the real one, Biffy Baston, he defeats him by using his magic word shebang and striking him with lightning. But then Biffy realises he has accidentally killed Magnamon. Our here, it is time to give the audience the Suicide Squads, or at least the first appearance of the Tyler Perry character. This issue is worth some money because of this, but surprisingly not that much money. We didn't actually see the Suicide Squads until issue 3, but this here plants the seeds that obviously pay off. And I think Suicide Squads is probably the most enduring thing to come out of this story. Justice League International, that was probably going to happen either way. Same with a new Flask series. But without this story, without this crossover, Suicide Squads might have been thrown out there as a new series and died because nobody knew what it was. Then we have another character, one of the Imperial Guard, the League of a Superman. It is Electron, and he has time travelled to the past for some reason. And I know about him, but he has a tie-in issue to this crossover that I have, and I still know about him. We get to see him attempt to fight Brimstone next, and he lasts a page longer than Firelord did, but after 4 pages of not comic, we have the sad look of the Justice League in 1986. This is Justice League Detroit, or as I like to call them, Justice League Detritus. I'd even call them that. Justice League Disgrace. That is another thing you could call them. Justice League Decline, Justice League Denied. You can have so much fun coming up with new names for Justice League Detroit, Justice League Defective, Justice League Deluded, Justice League Derisive. Anyway, Biffy Baston, he is overwhelmed with guilt about killing Magnamon, and he swears that he can never become Captain Marbles, the real one, ever again for fear of hurting someone else. But this was Darkseid's plan all along. When I started this, I was a bit derisive, a bit like Justice League Detroit. I was a bit derisive by announcing that it was now but a glorified advertisement. I stand by that statement, but there is some enjoyment to be had. There is some quality. It has a stellar creative team who, if this is an advertisement, it is a pretty good advertisement. Except that the plot is never going to be good, and you can find bits of it entertaining. I'll give it the 7 thumbs up rating.